I want to welcome everyone to our fall budget town hall. We typically do one this time of year to give an indication of some of the initial planning that has been taking place with respect to the 2016-2017 budget. We're going to today with myself, our Provost, Drew Marshall, and our Vice President, Finance and Services, Linda Dalgetty, walk through a number of things, including the context, sort of the status of where we are today, the process for the budget, budget information, so specifics around that, as well as some of the major initiatives that are on the docket for this year and which align with our Eyes High strategy. So a little bit on context, and I'll start with the institutional. Certainly, when we look at the budget of the university, you're going to see some charts with respect to the budget parameters, where our revenue comes from, where our expenses go. You will see on the revenue side that the major supporter of the University of Calgary, of course, is the Government of Alberta through the Campus Alberta grant, as well, of course, through tuition from our students. And also, if you look at our consolidated budget, a significant proportion of funds coming from research, particularly from the federal government. Things like salary settlements, you will see have an impact on our budget planning, and this year we will be in negotiations with the Faculty Association and the Graduate Student Association. Last year, of course, we concluded negotiations with AUPE for a 3-year time frame. So those that budget information or budget impact is certain going into the next year. On the provincial side, of course, we had a new government come into place in May of this year. That brought a June mini-budget, which made some changes to the previous government's budget parameters that they had outlined prior to the election. The good news is that an anticipated cut in our Campus Alberta grant was reversed. We actually got a 2% increase. There were some impacts on tuition. The tuition freeze came into place. But those funds that we do put into our budget model were actually backfilled or given to us by the government to be able to keep us whole, if you will, with respect to our entire budget. Heading into the October budget, there really wasn't a lot of new information for post-secondary because we were taken care of, if you will, in that June budget, both for this year and heading out to 2016-17, where we're anticipating a 2% increase in our Campus Alberta grant. So that information, of course, is part and parcel of what is being rolled into the current budget planning. There are other things that are happening provincially. I'll just walk through a few of those. In June, when they had the mini-budget, they also indicated that they were going to do a system review of the Campus Alberta system, or what they're now calling the Adult Learning System. In addition, that will look at the funding model for post-secondaries in the province and also the tuition policy. So that work will kick off, we understand, over the next weeks, and that will carry on for, I would assume, for about the next year or so until we get further clarity on the funding model for the system and, again, tuition policy going forward. Another aspect that we are responding to is what's called essential services. This is where the Government of Alberta is aligning to the Supreme Court decision out of Saskatchewan that those that are represented through associations and unions have the right to strike. So we were asked, as were other stakeholder groups, to input to that process our thoughts in terms of how that Supreme Court decision could be rolled into both the Post-Secondary Learning Act as well as the PSERA, which is the Public Service Employees Act as well. So a lot of balls in the air. One that we're excited about, we hope, is the government's announcement around infrastructure. In the October budget, they indicated there'd be an envelope of $4.4 billion for new infrastructure projects. The process that they will use to determine which projects get funded is to be determined. I know they're working on that. We're hoping post-secondary is a part of that envelope, and specifically the University of Calgary. We have some major capital projects we'd like to see addressed, and specifically the McKimmey Library Tower and the Professional Faculties Building and Library Block, which, of course, if you walk by there, you'll see some fencing around the McKimmey Tower. It needs a lot of work. Part of the building is not being used, and of course, we toured our minister around there a week ago, and I know it made a significant impression on her. In addition, Science A also needs a significant uplift with respect to bringing it up to modern standards and having the types of labs and facilities that we want for our students and for our faculty. On the federal side, of course, again, a new government in place last month. Strong message around post-secondary. We had the opportunity to have the Prime Minister-elect at that time come to a meeting of university presidents in Ottawa, and he spoke passionately as an educator. He considers himself an educator. He talked passionately about post-secondary education, the importance that universities play in building a strong Canada, as well as a commitment to innovation and also basic science. So that was very, very welcome. We're just starting to see the impacts. There's a new Minister of Science, a Chief Science Advisor. So again, some information flowing from government, which will have an impact on our research and scholarship landscape going forward. On the international front, I do want to start by really sending our strongest condolences to our colleagues, friends and families in France. Just a devastating incident last week that really has rippled around the world. Our hearts are with those families that were impacted, and I did send our condolences to the French ambassador to Canada on behalf of the University of Calgary. That adds to other uncertainty we see, whether it's low oil prices, the Canadian dollar being at relatively low levels historically, and just general global competition. So in addition to what we need to consider locally and nationally, we do need to keep our eye on the international stage and to make sure that as we align our resources through our budget model, it anticipates and it supports our strategy to be competitive both nationally and internationally.